My name is Jamie, and I am a programmer here at Fayetteville Public Library. Welcome to the library. Thank you for joining us and those who are watching on the live stream. As always, we thank you for our support in these programs. We have evaluation forms on the back table. This helps us put more programs like this together, and you can add what you're interested in seeing in the future. Today we welcome Sean Gaskell, who plays the kora, a 21-string harp from West Africa, where Sean has been able to travel to and study the kora and its traditions. With that, we welcome Sean.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming out. I'm Sean, and this is the kora. The kora usually has 21 or 22 strings. It's played with 4 fingers, your thumbs and your first finger on both hands. I learned how to play over the course of 4 visits to West Africa. I've taken 3 trips to Gambia and most recently to Senegal at the end of 2023. So most of the songs that I'll share with you are ones that I learned from the teachers that I studied with while I was there. And then between the songs, you'll be learning about some of the background and the history of the kora. So I'll tell you how it's built and the materials that are used. And then we'll have some time for questions right before the last song. So this first one that I'd like to play is a combination of 2 songs. The first one is Kuruntu Khalifa. This is the very first song that was composed on the kora back in the early 1700s, right after it was first built. It's named after Khalifa Sane, and he helped to kind of expand the Mandinka people's empire from kind of further off the Atlantic coast towards the coastline into Gambia and Senegal. So I say Mandinka. The Mandinka are one of 6 indigenous groups living in Gambia. Each has their own language, and most people know how to speak 2 or 3 languages in addition to the colonial language, which in Gambia was English and in Senegal was French. So you'll hear me singing in Mandinka primarily this afternoon. And then the song I'll transition into from there is called Jato. The word Jato in Mandinka means the lion. And so when I'm singing in this one, it basically translates to, if you ever are to meet a lion in the wilderness, you should take caution. Jato je, la jato, aramadia na jato la. La lama kumala jato ma, aramadia na jato la. Jato je, la jato, aramadia na jato la. La lama kumala jato ma, aramadia na jato la. Jato je, la jato, aramadia la jato la. La lama kumala jato ma, aramadia la jato la. Jato je, la jato, aramadia la jato la. La lama kumala jato ma, aramadia la jato la. Thank you. This one's called Miniamba, and up until my trip to Senegal just a little over a year ago, I thought that this song meant something completely different than what I was shared there. So I'll tell you both accounts, what was told to me about it. In Gambia, when I was there in 2008, 12, and 18, my teacher, Moriba Kuyate, my core teacher, had said that this song is one about one being in a state of travel, and that when you're away from home, you should be well looked after and taken care of. And then in Senegal, my primary teacher there, his name is Youssoufa Sissoko, and he said that it is a folk story about a person and a snake, and that when contact is made between the two, supposedly good things happen for both. So very different accounts, so take your pick. Miniamba tungama lambelon, Miniamba tungama lambelo, sava miniamba, tungama lambelo. Miniamba tungama lambelo, sava miniamba, miniamba, yeah, miniamba tungama lambelo, sava miniamba. Thank you. Can I get a tiny little bit more instrument in the house, if possible? Let's see here. All right, this one's called Amadu Seku, and so the title, Amadu, is one that's given to someone of very high respect. It could be for many different levels of respect. And in this case, this song was given to the former president of, or one of the former presidents of Guinea, West Africa, which other than Gambia and Senegal, where I studied, is one of the other 4 countries where you can find the Kora. So you've got in total Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, where the song's from, but also Guinea-Bissau and Burkina Faso. So Sékou Touré, I believe he was president in the first decade of the 1800s, and the song was dedicated to him just in kind of respect and in honor of who he was as a person and someone that a lot of people looked up to, I should say. Nyambe kong, ila jama nyambe kong, ila jama nyambe kong, Amadou sekou la jamanya mekam. Jen Jen Tung, Kunola Jen Jen Tung, Kunola Jen Jen Tung, Yidin Bon Boy today, Kunola Jen Jen Tung. Yambe Kung, Ilajaman Yambe Kung, Ilajaman Yambe Kung, Amadou sekou Ilajaman Yambe Kung. Jen Jen Tung, Kunola Jen Jen Tung, Ilajaman Yambe Kung, Amadou sekou Ilajaman Yambe Kung. Thanks. All right, so you can see that there's quite a few things that are used to make a kora, and to construct one, you usually start at the very bottom and work up towards the top. So at the base here, we've got a calabash, which is a gourd that grows like a pumpkin, just kind of down low to the grounds. You've got to pick it off the stem, cut it in half with a giant handsaw, and then scoop out all the wet stuff and all the seeds that are in there, and it gets dried in the sun for a couple of weeks up to a month, just depending on the weather mainly. It takes longer to dry out if there's more moisture in the air. And so once you've got half of a hollowed out calabash, you would stretch a wet animal skin over the open half, and that gets nailed to the back side here with upholstery tacks. And it's very important to put the skin on while it's wet, because if it's even slightly dry, it's probably going to crack, and that means you just have to tear it off and put another one on. When you're ready to start putting things together, you would have to soak that animal skin in a bucket of water overnight, and then the next morning you bring it out and you wring it out as best you can of all the water, and you lay it flat on the grounds, and then you take the rim of your calabash here and you lay it right flat on top of your animal skin. And so at that point, you would start folding the flaps of your animal skin up and over the round side here. So initially there's a lot more animal skin than you see on this instrument, enough to completely cover the round side of the calabash, like it's folded from the very bottom up over the top. So from that point, you take a knife and you cut holes into the animal skin about where the upholstery tacks go. But these holes are not for the tacks, they are for rope, because if you got to string a rope through all 80 to 90 holes that you just made with that knife to tighten the animal skin on the front side here. It's tight like a drum. It's never played as a drum, but you still want it tight, because the less that the animal skin moves during a change of weather, which happens quite frequently, the less that you have to tune the instrument in the long run. And that's because you've got what's called the bato in Mandinka right here. it's a notched bridge. That is a freestanding bridge, and it's not attached to the instrument. It's being held there by the tension of all 22 plucking strings. All right. So the tighter you can get this animal skin on to begin with, the less the bato will move. Like if the rain moves in, if there's a lot of humidity in the air, because that skin here naturally wants to soak up whatever moisture is in the air, and when that happens, it loosens, and the bato goes that way towards the skin, taking all the strings with it, which loosen them, and that lowers the pitch. And then when the sun comes back, everything dries out, the bridge goes back out, tightening all the strings, raising the pitch. So eventually you've got, once you string the rope through all of the holes, which really starts by taking one end of your rope and just tying it to one of those holes, and then stringing it through all the others, while at the same time you've got your foot on the calabash and you're yanking the heck out of that rope to make sure that the skin's nice and tight on the front sides. So eventually you've got what appears to be a giant star-shaped pattern of rope back here. That's when you go in with all your upholstery tacks, just nailing them in one at a time with a hammer all the way around. You go back to that knife, but this time you're going to cut off all the rope and all the leftover animal hide. You're just going to go right behind those upholstery tacks, kind of making a perfect cut. That takes everything off, and that re-exposes the calabash and brings into view exactly what you see right now on the back here. So it's quite the process to get it to that point. And then from there, you have to put in 3 wooden dowels on the front side. So 2 of them are handlebars right here, and then the last 2 are the crossbar that slide just behind them. All right, so you cut a total of 6 holes into the animal skin for those. And then in the calabash itself, you have to cut 3 holes, and 2 of those are for the big long neck right here. So there's a hole at the top and another right down here at the bottom. And then the 3rd hole right here is the largest of the 3, and that one serves 2 very important roles. The first is so that sound can come out, and the second is so that money can go in. And so the reason that money goes into this hole is because there are many songs named after people who had some role in the expansion of the Mandinka Empire, going all the way back to the 1200s. So a lot of folks who have songs for them lived back in the 13, 14, 1500s even. And nowadays, if you were at a performance and a song was played for someone as such, and there is a member of the audience who may have a distant familial tie to this person, as the song's being played, it's this person's responsibility to come up and pay the musician for calling out their family's past. And I'll get into why that happens later. It's really such a huge part as to why this music even exists. And not to worry, I will not be singing about anyone's family this afternoon. So, all right, so you've got your holes cut in here. Before you actually slide the neck through, you would go ahead and attach the tuning rings. All right, so these are also animal hides. So you've got one of these per plucking string. So you'll see there's 22. And so they get cut long and thin and then cross-braided around the neck. All right. And so once they dry a bit, you go ahead and slide your neck through, and holding everything together at the bottom is an iron ring. And you've got your anchor strings. They're mostly blue. Your plucking strings get tied off to those, and then finally each plucking string gets wrapped around one of these tuners up here. And these are called konso, the tuning rings are. And so to tune, you physically have to move these up or down the neck. If you're pushing them up the neck, you're tightening each string, and that's going to bring the pitch up. And the opposite happens if you bring them down. And this model of kora here, this is the one that you're going to see most of the time if you're going to Gambia, Senegal, or even Mali, Guinea. It's been built exactly as you see it here for just over 100 years. So right around 1920, they made a pretty serious modification from the initial model back in the 1700s. And so if you know about the calabash, the animal skin comes from a cow. Never seen anything more than that used. The tuners as well. And then your wood is called kano. And lastly, your plucking strings here are monofilament fishing line. So anywhere between 30-pound and 200-pound test grade fishing line. So that was the biggest change that came in the early 1920s, because before that, they used antelope hide for the strings, the skin of antelope, and it's a lot harder to work with. I've never seen or heard one played. It was a pretty quick transition out once the fishing line became available. So some kora builders nowadays will use a modified tuning system. So rather than the console right here, these cowhide tuning rings, a lot of kora builders nowadays use guitar pegs. So if you're going to do that, you'd want to have a neck that was not a circular shape like we've got here. You'd want to have one that was a rectangle so that you could fasten your guitar tuners to both the left and the right side in order to maintain the parallel nature of the strings. And because if you look closely, you'll see there's 11 strings on the left of the bridge and another 11 on the right. And at the end of the program, if you do want to have a close look at the kora, you're more than welcome to come up and do so. But for now, I'm going to show you how I change tunings, because while there are 4 traditional tunings on the kora, all of which have a 7-note diatonic scale, I typically play in 2 of them. The one I've been in is called syllaba, and a lot of tunes in this tuning were originally composed right along the Atlantic Ocean. And then you go to Sauta, where I'm heading now, and so tunes in this particular tuning were further off the Atlantic Ocean to begin with. To do that, I'm going to go to the 4th of my 7 scale degrees. So here's your 7, starting with G. Up. And your octave. So go into the 4th. And there's 2 of the 4th degree on the instrument. I'm going to take them up just a little bit. And this one that I'm bringing down right here, this one's the 22nd string. And I say that because for the longest time, the kora only had 21 strings. And when they started adding the 22nd in the early 1970s, I feel like, the elders at the time really frowned on it. Like, they didn't like it. They felt like adding that 22nd string really was taking away from the flavor of the traditional music. And so nowadays, I feel like over 60% of the kora that I see have either 22nd, even 23rd and 24th string. And anytime you have more than 21 strings, you're always adding an extra low note or an extra bass note that can be tuned to whichever of the other strings on the instrument that you would like it to. This one's called Kasumaman. This song's not that old, it's only about 40 years old, and I should say in relative terms to the existence of the kora. And it's kind of a sequel, if you will, to a song that's about 20 years older than it, coming from the 1960s. And that particular song was called Apollo, and that one was composed in the country of Mali, in commemoration of the Apollo space mission. Kasumaman, Apollo koning sumaman, Gasterie. Kasumaman, Jomben Apollo sumaman, Gasterie. Oya sumaman, Apollo koning sumaman, Gasterie. Kasumaman, Jomben Apollo sumaman, Gasterie. Kasumaman, apalo koning sumaman, kaserie. Sumaman, apalo koning sumaman, kaserie. Kasumaman, apalo koning sumaman, kaserie koning sumaman. Apalo koning sumaman, kaserie. Kasumaman, apano koning sumaman, kaserie. Sumaman, apano koning sumaman, kaserie. Kasumaman, apano koning sumaman, kaserie koning sumaman. Apano koning sumaman, kaserie. Thanks. This one's called Bajulo, and it comes from Senegal, from the region where my teachers there live, I should say. And they lived in between two towns. One was Sali, and the other is Mbour. And combined, they're a total of about 450 or 500,000 people. And they're right along the Atlantic coast, about an hour and a half south of the capital of Senegal, Dakar, which is a city of about 10 million people. And this one speaks of the kind of the regional significance in terms of trade and commerce. So. Thank you. This one's called Tabara. It's named after Tabara Njai. She lived in the eastern part of Gambia back in the late 1700s through the middle 1800s, and the song was dedicated to her by the people in the town where she lived, just based on how well liked and respected that she was. She was someone that people would come to with concerns, kind of needing advice and just overall comfort, and something she was very appreciated for. So, Tabara. Hilala, hilala, tabara. Hilala, hilala, tabara. La hilala, hilala, tabara. Hilala, hilala, tabara. La hilala, tabara. Hilala, hilala, tabara. Tabara, kosiye, tabara, kosiye. Tabara, kosiye, kosiye. Thanks. So the people playing the kora in West Africa are part of what a lot may say would be a class system that exists, because the last name that you have determines the type of work that you will do. Historically, it's changed a lot, but your family has been likely doing one thing for many generations within that family lineage. And so a lot of these types of work are things that we have right here in the States. But I would say that the people playing these instruments are sort of in their own realm, if you will, in that they are hereditary historians whose responsibility it is to know 800 years worth of history, dating all the way back to the founding of the Mandinka Empire in the mid-1200s. And the kora is one of the primary vehicles for preserving the history. And there's a term given to the people that play them. They are called griots, spelled Griots in the plural. And so some of the griots will only kind of fulfill that role as a musician. Others will do it through oral history keeping or storytelling, if you will. But a lot cross over and do it both ways. And so when I was in West Africa, I would usually see the kora played at 3 types of events. One was very casual and laid back, and the other 2 were quite formal. An informal event would be held inside of a griot family's compound. So the word compound is the term that people there use to describe their homes, of which most often an extended family will live. So I would say over 90% of the people that I knew lived with 25 to 35 of their family members. So you'd have grandparents all the way down to grandkids. So for an informal event, you might just have 20, 30 people come over for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time and just hang out and listen to some music and maybe have some food. But then for formal events like weddings and naming ceremonies, the kora was featured in a much larger band, because it was at first rare to see the kora played solo like you're seeing now. It's usually accompanied by other instruments. So at one of these events, you would have another 7 or 8 musicians up on stage. So you'd have a kora, you might have a balafon, which is a wooden xylophone played in each hand. You may have some drums even, like both a kit drum, but also traditional drums like djembe and sabar, which are hand drums. And then you may have keyboards, electric guitar, electric bass, all that. And everyone was plugged in. And it carried more of a feeling of a rock concert. And people would get up and dance. And it was really what I feel like the bands preferred, because it really allowed them to engage the audience. And so one of such which ways was through singing. So I'm hoping that y'all can help me with this next song. This one's called Tira Makan. So this one goes back to the 1200s. And Tira Makan Traore, who this piece is for, he was one of the first generals to basically recruit people into the armies at the time. And so it's like a battle song. With it comes a call and response. And so I would like your help with the response. It's 3 words in Mandinka. It's the same 3 each and every time. And when they're translated, they mean the enemy was not successful at piercing Tira Makan with a sword. So it's a loose translation. But for starters, could you please say after me each of the 3 words one at a time? The first word is Susa. Second word, Rejo. Yep. And third word is the name of the person, Tira Makan. Good. Yeah. So now say Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Good. So now I'm going to sing those 3 to you, and then I'd like you to sing them right back to me, and let's just pass it back and forth to each other for a little bit. It goes. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Again. Susa Rejo Tira Makan. Good. So that's the response. So there's 3 call lines that'll seem to lead us into that. The first is Amuru Yebang Tira Makan. So that means the enemy tried to pierce Tira Makan with a sword in the battle. So we come in right there with Susa Rejo Tiramakan. I'll then say Kelike Muru Yebang Tiramakan. So Kelike is a person warning that the sword is too close. So then we respond after that, Susa Rejo Tiramakan. The last call line, Ifa Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan. So it's the father and the mother of Tiramakan wish him well, like they're wishing for his safe return home. And then we come in after that. So let's give it a shot. All right. I'll guide you in. It goes. Muru yebang tira makan, susare jo tira makan, kelke muru yebang tira makan, susare jo tira makan, iba tira makan, ifa tira makan, susare jo tira makan, ifa tira makan, iba tira makan, susare jo tira makan. Good. All right. I think you have it. So let's go ahead and mix it with the kora. Muru yebang tira makan, susare jo tira makan, kelke muru yebang tira makan, susare jo tira makan, eba tira makan, efa tira makan, susare jo tira makan, eba tira makan, efa tira makan, susare jo tira makan. Muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, kelke muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, efa tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, efa tira magan, susare jo tira magan. Muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, kelke muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, efa tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, efa tira magan, susare jo tira magan. Muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, kelke muru yebang tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, efa tira magan, susare jo tira magan, eba tira magan, susare jo tira magan. Thanks. Thank you all. That was great. So I first was introduced to the kora about 19 years ago, and I came to it at a music festival in my hometown of Olympia, Washington, the States, which is about 45 minutes south of where I live now in Tacoma, which is the town right next to Seattle. So And so that night, I heard another student of the instrument like myself. His name is Kane Mathis. And I just remember that night, um, it was a venue with very tall ceilings and wooden benches. And I remember leaning back, facing up, closing my eyes. And as I was listening to Kane, I was just wondering to myself how all of the sound could be coming from one instrument. And I was absolutely captivated. And so that day, I decided to transition from being a lifelong clarinet player over to the kora. So, not the most common jump from one instrument to another, but I talked with Kane about a month later, and I figured out that he was willing to teach. So I had to go up to Seattle, where he lived, and take lessons. And I did that once every couple of months for about a year and a half. And then I took my first trip to Gambia. I was taking a couple years off of school at that point to work and figure out what I wanted to do in college. And so when I went back, I was able to get a study contract to go to West Africa, to Gambia, and earn credit towards my music degree here in the States. And so that first trip, all the way back in 2008, was about a 3.5-month stay. And I went back to Gambia in 2012 and 2018 for about 4 and 5 weeks at a time. And the teachers that I worked with there were the same ones that Kane, my American teacher, had. So he put me in touch with them. And so their names are Moriba Kuyate, and he's the son of Malamini Jabate. Worked with both of them quite a bit, and then Malamini passed away shortly after my second trip. In 2023, I took my first trip to Senegal to study with Youssoufa Sissoko and his son Mamadou Sissoko. And between the 4 teachers in both countries, in both Gambia and Senegal, I received individual instruction for anywhere between 4 and 8 hours a day. So I could have a lesson in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, lots of practice time in between. And on top of that, I got to stay with the extended families of my teacher. And honestly, I feel like I was taken care of as if I was one of the family. It was truly remarkable. And so the fact that they were so gracious and so willing to take in someone from across the Atlantic Ocean, teach me some of the traditional music, show me some of the language, Mandinka in Gambia, Wolof in Senegal, is truly a gift. And to have their encouragement to come and share this instrument with others in the States is something that I hold a very high regard when I'm presenting these programs. So I really thank them for that, and I thank you for coming this afternoon. So thanks. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up with one more song here. We will take some questions. Before we get into that, I will let you know that I've got a couple of CDs on the back table. If you want to take one home, one's $15, the other's $20. The orange one is an older release. That one was released back in 2016. That one's $15. The white album just released last summer, so it's pretty new. That one's $20. You can pay with cash or check or a credit card or even a digital payment like Venmo or PayPal. If you've got cash or check, both forms of payment can go into it's a small plastic tub right to the left of the CDs there. For a credit card, you would need to come see me to work that. And then for Venmo or PayPal, there's QR codes on the table that you can scan. And then you can just take your CD that way. Or I should say, if you're like me and you don't have a CD player anymore, both albums are available digitally on my Bandcamp site. And so there's a QR code for that on the far left. To the far right, there's an email list. Whenever I come back through an area, I send out emails about where and when I'll be. So if you want to get on such lists, feel free. That's all that goes out on that email and nothing else. And then lastly, to the very far right are more QR codes for each of the social media sites that I post content to, like Facebook, Instagram, and I've got a YouTube page as well where I post videos. So feel free to follow me on any of those. Questions? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, cool. Welcome back.
Does the cover come in different sizes for different, like treble or alto? Is there different
Not as far as the notational range, but they do come in different physical sizes. But yeah, the note ranges are going to be the same. But I mean, you can put them into Western keys. Like right now, I'm in the key of G major, technically, which is just all the white keys plus an F sharp. So it's like the only accidental. Yeah. Yeah. So it's G major right now. And so basically, the lowest notes in the kora are closest to you, and the highest pitched notes are furthest away from you. So those ones are usually played by the index fingers, whereas the lowest pitched keys are going to be played by your thumbs. And so your lowest 4 notes are on the left side of the bridge. So there you're skipping a 4th altogether. You're going like from 1 to, I think it's note number 5 on the, or let's see, yeah, it's the 5th. So you're going a 5th. And that's just single intervals for the whole rest of the way up. You got those 2 on the left. Once you get to that point, as you go single intervals to get higher, you're just crossing over the bridge 1 note at a time. I know it's kind of hard to see from the back, but it is definitely one of the harder notational progressions of any instrument that I've played. So, yeah, just the first 2. Yeah, and then from there it's all single intervals. Yeah, so, yeah.
Whenever you want to play in a group?
Yeah, whenever I go on tour, it's usually a solo, but I've got folks back at home that I play with, and it's a variety of instruments. Yeah, I mean, I've played with guitarists, bass. There's another kora player that lives in Seattle, cello. Those are some of the ones, the more recent ones, anyways. Yeah.
How you can make that machine. Did you do that?
Yeah. So I've built them. No, Moriba, my Gambian kora teacher, built this one for my 2018 trip. So the way it usually works, so he's the kora builder of the family. So anyone who wants a kora just goes to him. And that's the way it usually is in every griot family. There's usually one person who builds all the instruments. And so Moriba would have one built for me ahead of my 3 trips to Gambia. And then at some point, we would gather all the materials to build a second one. And he would basically be standing behind my shoulder telling me what to do as I put it all together. And then I'd come home from each trip with both of those kora. So I never had to take any kora over there. I always came home with them. Yeah. So.
Know if the kora's ever been used in any, I guess, what you could call Western style music?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, especially nowadays. I mean, even folks over there are doing cover tunes on it. So of any genre you can imagine. Yeah. So, yeah.
Is this music on paper anywhere, or do you just learn it by?
Yeah, it can be on paper, but no one ever uses it to read. Yeah, like it's if you were so I played the clarinet growing up. For that, you're in the treble clef, right? If you've got a lower note or a lower pitched instrument, like say like a trombone or a tuba, for those you're down in the bass clef. If you were gonna have sheet music for the kora, you'd have to use both. So you'd have like the treble up top, the bass down below. And historically, like no one does that there. It's all passed down orally, and even on top of that, it's really encouraged that everyone kind of give it their own flavor, if you will. Like there's a lot of kind of what you might imagine to be jazz going on with the kora, improvisation. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And so like a lot of these tunes, there's a central melody, and most people you meet over there who are familiar with this music are going to recognize those melodies, but everyone does it a little different. Yeah, so. Yeah, so the wood's called keno. Yeah, I believe it's spelled Keno. I feel like, but yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's only found in the region where the kora lives. So like those 6 northwestern African countries. Yeah. How many do I have? Right now I've got 2. I've only had 3 at the most. And I've gone through probably 6 or 7 at this point, as far as like bringing them home, and then they may get passed off to a student or someone like that at some point. Only cow.
Only cow.
Yeah, yeah.
Holy cow.
Right, right.
Holy cow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
With some of the, I understand it's an oral history, so you have a lot of these folk tales being said through oral history. Are any of them written down or translated?
Yeah, nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of there's some books out there that kind of go along those lines now, for sure. I mean, the ones that I'm most familiar with are like some of the ones that I was looking at in college, as far as like the background, the history of this music, as far as like the folk story side, if you will. I don't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I do have some titles saved. But yeah, like the one that really goes into the deep history of all this music that I can really recommend is called Mande Music, Mande, by Eric Chari. And so the word Mande is actually considered like the all-encompassing term for what up to this point I've been describing as Mandinka, because in Gambia they call themselves the Mandinka people, most of the people playing these instruments. But in like Guinea it's Malinke, and Mali I believe it's Mandingo. So sorry I can't be more of a resource for you there at the moment. Yeah.
You key this in G.
Yeah.
When you're over there in Gambia, what key do they use?
So my teachers in Gambia like to use F, which is a step down. Yeah. So that's the ones that they like the most. And then in Senegal, my teachers there like to use G, and I just choose G because I feel like it fits my vocal range more. So it's just more of a personal preference. Yeah.
Widespread geographically in Africa is this issue?
So 6 countries: Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso. Yeah. Way a long ways away. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So cool.
I was just going to ask, can you tune any particular kora to different key?
Yeah. I find that once I get below the key of E, so I've played in both F and G most often, once I get down to E or below that, the strings are too loose. And so when you're plucking them, they just kind of get mushed together.
Wrapped around your tuning rings?
Yeah. So they're anchored to the blue strings down here, and then they're wrapped around each of these. So, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and give you one more song. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to have a closer look at the kora, if you want to ask any further questions as I'm packing up here, you're more than welcome to. I mean, you can even take a picture of the kora, or a picture of you in the kora, or me in the kora, or even you and me in the kora. It's totally up to you. So I'll let you have at it. I'm going to switch it up for this last one, and I'm going to give you a song that I came up with, which was really encouraged starting after my second trip to Gambia. And so this particular trip comes from this song comes from the influence of a backpacking trip that I took in 2018 into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in western North Carolina, which is pretty close to where I lived for about a 10-year period in my life before moving back to Washington State in 2023. And so there was an absolutely gorgeous sunset from our backcountry campsite. And so when I got home the next day, I started putting together this song, and it's called Smoky Mountain Sunset. Thank you. All right, thank you all again so much. Hope you enjoyed.